All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. The title of today's webinar is AgSquared for Beginning Farmer Trainers, and my name is Drew Katz. I'm the Director of User Support and Farmer Engagement at AgSquared. I'm joined today by a few others, including Julia Stellari, who is the co-founder at AgSquared, also David Wides, who is a farmer and also AgSquared's User Support Specialist. And finally, we have Ava Agudelo, who is the coordinator of the National Incubator Farm Training Initiative, also known as NIFTI, which is co-sponsoring today's webinar. Before I hand the microphone over to Ava, who's going to speak a bit about NIFTI, I'm going to first quickly go over some webinar logistics, just to make sure that everyone knows how to engage and participate in the webinar this afternoon. Right now, you should be seeing the presentation in a window on your computer screen. And in addition, you should have a webinar control panel that's anchored to the right side of your screen. If the control panel happens to be collapsed, you can expand it just by clicking on the red arrow button. Inside the control panel, you'll see that there are two sections. The top section lets you change your audio settings. This is where you'd go if you'd like to switch back and forth between using your computer speakers or calling in by telephone. The bottom section of the control panel is where you can type your questions to send them to David and to see the answers that are sent back to you or that are sent back to the whole group. Throughout the webinar today, we do encourage everyone to send in their questions as they come up throughout the webinar, and David will do his best to get back to you. At the end of the webinar, Julie and I will also leave some time to address any questions that David doesn't get to, or also just answer questions that warrant a longer response out loud. We do have a pretty full house today, so it's possible that we won't get to everyone's questions. If this is the case, we'll be sure to respond to your questions with a follow-up email after the webinar is over sometime later today or tomorrow. So with the logistics out of the way, what I want to do is pass the microphone over to Eva, and she can speak a little bit about NIFTI before we jump into the AgSquared section of the webinar.
Hi, everybody. Okay. Thanks so much for coming to this webinar. As you hopefully know by now, this event has been co-sponsored by the National Incubator Farm Training Initiative, which provides training resources and technical assistance to organizations who run land-based beginning farmer training programs. There are well over 100 of these projects operational now across the U.S. and North America, and you all have shared challenges. So NIFTI got started in, NIFTI got started in January of 2012, about 2 years ago now, to help you all learn from organizations that have been running farm incubators for the past 10 to 15 years so that no one has to recreate a farmer training program from scratch. And to date, our veteran incubator project partners that you see listed here have provided over 150 hours of free one-on-one technical assistance to dozens of organizations across the country and North America. We've also offered webinars like this one, 2 annual in-person national field schools. We have a searchable resource directory online and a listserv that offers you a way to connect with other partners, other projects like yours, and find out how your peers are problem solving and making their programs as effective as possible. I just want to draw your attention to a few of the resources we have online now. First is our resource database. We have almost 200 documents now, including lease templates, application materials, curriculum, and much, much more. It's a pretty awesome tool and relatively easy to search through and find what you're looking for. You can access any of these resources for free at any time, and you're always also welcome to get in touch with me if you have resources that your program has created that you'd like to share here with other organizations. This is designed to be a place where everybody can share with one another. So We also have a comprehensive farm incubator toolkit, which takes you through every stage of developing and operating a land-based beginning farmer training program, and also has links to many of the best documents that we have in the resource library. And finally, last year we conducted interviews with a dozen incubator projects from all over the country, and we compiled that information into these case studies. So for some nitty-gritty on-the-ground stories of projects at various stages of development and how they make their programs work, definitely take a minute to look at these. We are planning 2 more webinars this season, so one on metrics and evaluation for incubator projects in March, which has been a hot topic this past year, and then one on program funding in April. So stay tuned for more announcements about that over the listserv. And as always, feel free to get in touch with me anytime you have questions or suggestions, or if there's anything that you can think of that NIFTI can do to support your work. So I will pass it on to Julia, and we can get started.
Hi, Ava. Thank you so much for the background. Drew, I'm seeing a prompt here that it wants to show my screen. I think that we were going to run it off of your screen, but it's not showing me to advance the PowerPoint. So how about if I just tell you to advance it?
That will work.
Okay, great. So if I get, because I'm kind of running blind here, if I get off, just let me know, and we'll figure it out. So first off, thank you everybody for coming. We really appreciate your presence, and we appreciate very much NIFTI's sponsorship of this webinar. I hope that, oh, here we go. I guess we're back. I hope that with the by the end of today's webinar, we will have accomplished these 2 main goals, which are first and foremost, we'd love for you to have a clear understanding of how beginning farmers can make use of AgSquared. So to that end, what we'll do is we'll demonstrate some of the key functionalities that make AgSquared a powerful tool for beginning farmers. And this is a great opportunity for you to learn about how AgSquared can work with the farmers that you work with to help them develop their initial crop plans and keep better farm records. And really more generally, what it's about getting started on the right foot. And our second goal is for you to leave knowing how AgSquared can work with your programs. We're really interested in reaching out to the farmer community through farm incubators, and we want to support the work that farm incubators do in helping get new farms started. So what we'll do to that end is introduce you to the resources that AgSquared can provide for teaching crop planning and record keeping in your beginning farmer training programs. So as a quick agenda for today's webinar, we're going to start with a quick introduction to AgSquared. Some of you might be already familiar with AgSquared from the Beginning Farmer Learning Network, but for those of you who aren't, and for those of you who just need a quick refresher, I'll just start with an intro, and then we'll pass on to the meat of the webinar, which is really going to be an AgSquared tour that Drew is going to conduct. And then after that, we'll just take a moment to talk about training opportunities for your organization, talk about an AgSquared case study, bring up a couple of organizations that are using AgSquared and discuss how they're making use of AgSquared in their programs. And as Drew mentioned, Dave Wides from AgSquared is going to be answering questions all throughout the webinar, and we'll leave some time at the end to address any remaining questions and maybe go through some of the more in-depth ones that require a longer answer in detail. So as a quick introduction, so what is AgSquared? AgSquared is an online platform that helps farmers, right now primarily fruit and vegetable growers, adopt a record-keeping workflow on their farms, and then make sense of the records that they collect through AgSquared to optimize the productivity and profitability of their farm businesses. So in AgSquared, a farmer can create his or her yearly crop plan. The plans are then turned into a farm's daily task list through our farm schedule management tool, which we call the AgSquared calendar. A farm's crop plans and tasks lists in AgSquared become records that can be analyzed for productivity and profitability, and that serve as a starting point for the next season's plans. So what AgSquared is really doing is it's connecting the process of planning, management, and record keeping and making it into one cohesive cycle so that information is not needed to be recorded redundantly, but rather information from your crop plan passes all throughout the different stages of farming, and allows you the opportunity to really analyze it at the end. And so in a sense, let me just go back one slide, where we talk about record keeping, we can talk about record keeping, but we can also really discuss it as analysis, because the point of having farm records is to help you make better decisions about how to run your farm. So in terms of who is using AgSquared right now, this slide is just a little bit old, but the graphic is pretty, so we kept it in. We actually have more than 6,700 farmers who have joined AgSquared, and they're located in all 50 states, 81 other countries. And the farms really range in size from less than half an acre to more than 600 acres. In this sense, AgSquared is pretty unique, is that it's kind of independent of the size of your farm. We don't scale in terms of, we scale in terms of farm size, both down and up, and there's no limitation to how big you can be or how big you can grow and still use AgSquared. What it is primarily designed to do is it's designed to be a record keeping and management tool for mixed vegetable crop growers. And in particular, mixed vegetable growers are the strongest segment of our growing community of farmers, and they've been very vocal about their needs for better farm planning and management software. But in reality, AgSquared is actually really useful for for many other kinds of fruit and vegetable production, actually, and specialty cut flower growers too. So, for example, there's an AgSquared farmer who grows microgreens in a spare room in his house and uses AgSquared, and another farmer who uses AgSquared to manage a 280 acre farm that also includes a custom baling operation. So in that regard, AgSquared is really powerful and flexible and can really meet the management needs of various types of crops. And right now we have hundreds of farmers who have been successfully using AgSquared at this point over the course of a couple of years to keep track of a whole variety of crops that they grow, from cut flowers to fruit trees to nuts to berries to wine grapes. So it's quite flexible in terms of the types of farms that it serves and the types of crops that can be tracked. So in particular, why AgSquared as a tool for beginning farmers? As we understand it, one of the challenges that beginning farmers have is really starting out their farm businesses on the right foot and understanding kind of at a high level what it is that they do well, which enterprises on their farms are successful, and how to make their operations profitable so that they can invest appropriately and grow their businesses. And so the way AgSquared can help support this is by helping that farm get started on the right foot and establish good systems and processes and habits right from the very beginning. So basically, you can learn how to use AgSquared even before you've started farming so that your record keeping is up and running right when you get up and running. And that means that over time, you'll have the information that you need to make good choices about how to manage your farm business. Another aspect of AgSquared that we think is especially useful for beginning farmers is the fact that it's a very flexible platform. There's a lot of data that can be recorded in AgSquared, but you have to by no means record all the data in AgSquared to use the platform successfully. And I'll talk a little bit about that with the case study at the end. So even if you're just keeping one or two types of farm records on your farm, it can still add a lot of value by helping you gather the information that you need to make better decisions. In addition, AgSquared is a really useful tool for beginning farmers because it can be a farm's first crop planning tool. It creates a structure and workflow for the crop planning process that we've found helps beginning farmers successfully execute their crop plans. And of course, the goal of record keeping is to have the information available to help you make better decisions. So AgSquared can help farmers create more complete and better crop records, streamline the planning and management process, and also create records that are organized and easy to share, which can be an asset for both the beginning farmers as well as the farmer training programs. So with that as a little bit of an overview as to how AgSquared can work with beginning farmers, I'm going to pass the presenter baton back to Drew, who can launch into the tour.
Great, thanks so much, Julia. So AgSquared has a lot of different tools and features, and while the goal of today is certainly to familiarize everyone with the software, it just won't be possible for me to cover all the specific tools and features that make up AgSquared. So what I'm going to do is focus on the tools and features that are particularly relevant and useful to beginning and new farmers. So just a preview of some of what I'll be demonstrating during the tour of the software. First, I'll show how farmers can create a farm map that serves as a visual tool for crop planning and management. I'll then go on to demonstrate how farmers can create crop plans that include all of the important details and relevant details, including planting dates, seed amounts, things like the layout of their plantings in the field, and so on. I'll move on and give a short tour of AgSquared's harvest tracking feature. And then to wrap up, I'll demonstrate how farmers can use AgSquared's calendar to schedule and manage farm activities throughout the season, as well as demonstrate how to keep and review records directly in an AgSquared account. So with that, I'm going to close out of the presentation here and open up my web browser and pull up an AgSquared account. Just want to let everyone know that this webinar is being recorded. So this is something that you'll be able to refer back to at a later time and also share with other stakeholders or other folks that you're working with. So here I'm at the AgSquared web page, and I'm going to click the login button and log into an account that's already populated that I've created for the purposes of giving webinars. And so you'll notice as I go through the account today that it has a lot of different crops in it, a lot of information already in the account. For those of you, if you're just starting with AgSquared, it might look a little bit different just because you haven't had the chance to add in your plantings yet. So here you can see we're in AgSquared, and the benefit of it being a web-based software, first of all, farmers can log in from anywhere as long as there's access to internet. If you have a desktop computer, a laptop, a mobile device, a tablet, as long as there's access to internet, you can access your AgSquared account. Also, another advantage to having a web-based software, there's no software to download or install at any time. We often make updates to AgSquared. We release new features. These are automatically available when you log into your account. You never have to download anything to your desktop. When you sign into AgSquared, or you arrive at the Workbench homepage, you can see here we have some getting started resources. There's some links to articles, also video tutorials to help people get started on the right foot. Also, throughout AgSquared, if you ever need help, there is this button here with the question mark in it. That's the icon for a support center. And in the support center, which I'll give a tour of later, there's also more articles and resources for beginning users. You can see up on the top we have a suite of icons. These represent the different tools in AgSquared. And what I'm going to do is start off by giving a tour through the Places tool. So in the Places tool, the first thing that I want to highlight is AgSquared's mapping feature. When farmers first sign into AgSquared, they're prompted to enter in the address of their farm. And then when they go ahead and click on the map icon in the Places tool, they can view their farm on a Google satellite. So you can see here, I'm just going to expand this window a bit and zoom in. You're able to see a map of the farm that I'm working on in this account. What's really nice about this is that it provides a framework, a visual framework for farmers to really start, mapping places onto their farm, drawing in their fields, their greenhouses, and anything else that they'd like to add to their farm map. You'll notice up here, there's a drawing tool. I have the ability to draw buildings, fields, growing enclosures, landmarks, and properties. And you can see here on my map that I've already gone in and added a few different places. If I click on one of these places, you'll notice that There's some other information. I'm able to put in a description. And also by drawing places onto my map, I'm able to calculate the acreage of those different places. Now, mapping is not only something that farmers like to do. It's certainly engaging and fun to see your farm on Google Maps and in your AgSquared account. But it's also a really important step for beginning farmers to be able to visualize and sort of think spatially about their farm. We find this is especially true when it comes time to do crop planning. It's nice for farms to be able to see where their different crops and plantings will be going on their farm. Also, we find that a lot of beginning farmers aren't too familiar with the land that they're working. And having a bird's eye view or bird's eye perspective can be really helpful for them to sort of imagine their farm and think about where things are going to go over the course of a year or their first season. So with that being said, for those farmers out there that don't necessarily need to be looking at a map, it's certainly not something that's required. You're able to add places to your AgSquared account simply by just using this places tool and adding your buildings, fields, and so forth directly to your account. You can see here on the left-hand side, these are all the different places that I've added thus far. If I click on one of these, you can see the types of information I can add about each individual place. So right here, I've clicked on East Field. The East Field, I'm able to add a photo to my account, add in a descriptive piece right here about the soil and the quality of the field. And again, I have my area or my acreage. When it comes to fields, you can also add beds. If I click on the Beds tab, which is located next to the Overview tab, you can see that I've added up to 20 beds for this particular East field. And I can actually just look at the crop history for this field over time and see all my crops and plantings that have been assigned or added to each one of these different beds. So if I click on bed number 1 and expand it, you'll notice that it tells me some dimensions about my bed, and then also all the different crops that have been residing in this bed dating back to 2012 and looking forward out until March of 2014. So you can start to imagine here as farmers start to add in their places on their farm, they start to map their fields and adding beds, you're really setting a nice sort of visual framework for doing crop planning. And I'll show you in a moment when we go into the crops tool how it is that you can assign plantings to beds on your farm. But this is really, really useful for the beginning farmer if they're starting to embark on a crop rotation plan. They can use this beds tab as a tool to keep track of their plantings and, also which families are in each given field or each given bed on their farm. So I just want to show you quickly, greenhouses. I have a few different greenhouses on my farm. This one is the propagation greenhouse. You'll notice below that I can enter in a lot of information about my greenhouse structure. And with greenhouses, you can add benches. So like you can add beds to fields, if farmers are growing starts or doing a lot of transplants, you can be keeping track of your plants on a bench basis within your greenhouses. So that's just a quick overview of the Places tool. Again, the take-home points are really that you can draw your places onto the map, but it's not necessary. What's really important here is that farmers are just adding fields and greenhouses to their account. So when it comes to time to do crop planning, they can be assigning their plantings to fields and greenhouses on their farm. And speaking of crop planning, let's move on to the crops tool. The crops tool is where farmers do all their crop planning AgSquared, and there's a lot of farmers, spending time in the crops tool right now, given the season. In most areas of the U.S. right now, a lot of farmers are thinking about the upcoming planting season and thinking about and tinkering with their crop plans. And this is where a lot of that planning takes place. For beginning farmers, the process of creating a crop plan, the first year or two can be really daunting, and understandably so. There are a lot of details to consider, a lot of unknowns as farmers are becoming familiar with what does well on their new farm. And what's nice about AgSquared's crop planning tool is that first it provides a crop planning framework. And Julia mentioned this briefly. Just by using the tool, farmers are able to understand all the different aspects and components that make up a crop plan. They also, we have a lot of forms and calculators built into AgSquared's crops tool, which I'll show you in just a moment. And we find that a lot of new farmers sort of get overwhelmed with a lot of the calculations that need to be made about the layout and the spacing of their plantings in the field. We have a lot of tools and calculators built in that makes this process, that makes these calculations a lot easier for the beginning farmer. So, but first and foremost, crop plans are made up of, crops. You can see here on the left-hand side, I have a whole list of crops that I'm growing on my farm. And I can click on any one of these. And you'll notice that for each crop, there's a lot of different plantings that I've created. You can see here that I have plantings from 2013 and also 2014. And I'll just go ahead and click on my kestrel beet planting here, just as an example. You can see for just this one planting that I put on in the ground on March 30th of 2013, I've entered in a lot of different information. I've uploaded a photo of this particular variety. I have a link to the seed company where I bought this packet of seeds. I have my initial sowing date, a lot of sowing details, including the planting location, material and layout. So this is, my number of seeds and the dimensions of my planting in the field. And then finally, I have a begin harvest and an end harvest date. So you can see here that AgSquared gives farmers the ability to enter in quite a bit of detail about each individual planting. And what I want to stress again is that it's not necessary to enter in all this information in order for AgSquared to work for the farmer. We understand that beginning farmers may just want to focus on production, and when it comes to keeping records, they just want to, keep some basic records, maybe just about the dates of their plantings, their sowing and their transplants, and maybe they want to keep track of where their plantings are. They can just put that information, and AgSquared will still be useful for them. For those farmers that want to keep more detailed records, you can certainly do that in AgSquared. And what I want to do is quickly highlight some of the calculators I was talking about earlier. In this form here, again, we're looking at my kestrel beets. You'll see here that there are a lot of text boxes where you can enter in information about the layout and spacing of this particular planting. You can see on top it says calculate from. This is where you can calculate from the number of seeds you have. So for example, if you have a certain number of seeds you want to plant and you want to figure out what you can expect for a harvest for that number of seeds, you can make that calculation here. Maybe a farmer has an order for 200 pounds of carrots and they want to calculate backwards how many seeds they need to grow and what the spacing should be in order to meet that order. That's another possibility here. And then finally, and we find that this is most common, maybe a beginning farmer knows that they want to plant 2 rows of beets in a given year. They can enter in the planting area, so the dimensions of their rows or their beds, and calculate backwards the number of seeds they need to purchase in order to fill that space. So there's a lot of power here. And so if a farmer wants to get detailed and wants to really pencil out the layout and spacing of their plantings, they certainly can do that in AgSquared. I also want to point out in this form, this is where you can assign plantings to fields and greenhouses that you've created in your farm map. You'll see here I can pull up the map display, which we were looking at earlier in the Places tool. And I can go ahead and actually select the specific field where I want my bee planting to go, simply by just clicking on it and clicking on Select this place. So you can start to see here the integration of tools and information in AgSquared. After mapping your farm and adding places, I'm now in the Crops tool making my crop plan, and I can be assigning my plantings not just to specific fields, but actually down to the specific beds on my farm. So you can see here I'm viewing those 20 beds that are located in my east field. And I can even see, again, which plantings are in which beds so that I can make crop rotation decisions as I'm making my plan. So again, this information is not required to be entered, but it's certainly there for the farmer that wants to scale up in terms of the type of records they're keeping. We offer a lot of different webinars at AgSquared, which are available for free to all folks who are signing up for an account. And we actually have a whole hour-long webinar just on using the crop planning tools. And so we encourage all new farmers to join the webinars and to get some free training. So another thing I want to point out, or feature I want to point out in the crops tool, you'll notice here that there is a harvest button, and in AgSquared, we make it quite easy to keep track of harvest records. And I know that for a lot of beginning farmers, we find that they tend to keep harvest records, but they're usually linked to their sales, let's say at the farmer's market. And while this is really important for understanding, your new markets and understanding which plantings or vegetables are selling well at each market, it's really important for farmers also to understand how varieties or plantings are doing on their farm from the perspective of yield. To demonstrate how to keep track of harvests in AgSquared and what it looks like, I'm going to click on this Bolero carrot planting and click on my Harvest tab. So this planting is from 2013, and you can see here that I have a bunch of different entries from August all the way through mid-September of 2013. And you can see for each harvest entry I have a date, the quantity that I harvested, and the status of that harvest. I can also pull up some more information, including a description that I entered about this harvest. So these carrots were sold loose by the pound at the farmer's market. I can even see where I stored these carrots. If I scroll down, you can see that AgSquared conveniently tallies up my harvests to date for a specific planting. So back for my Bolero plantings in 2013, I had harvested 869 pounds, which is pretty good given that my expected harvest was 900. To add a harvest in AgSquared, it's just a matter of clicking on the harvest button, selecting your planting. So I can use the example of my Bolero carrots. So it's able to find my carrots in my crop plan. I can enter in a date, the quantity of my harvest, and some other information about this harvest if I'd like, and just simply add this to my account. So a really simple and easy way to do harvest tracking in AgSquared. Again, this is really useful for small farmers to get a grasp on which varieties are growing well in their soils, and to help them make educated decisions about what crops they should continue to grow on their farm. This is something that's really useful when it comes time to do crop planning in a subsequent year. Farmers can look at the layout and spacing of their plantings, compare that with the yield that they got, and then decide if they want to make changes to their crop plan the following year for that given planting. So again, we offer webinars that talk a little bit more about harvest recording and harvest tracking. What I want to do now is hop on over to AgSquared's calendar tool. So far during the webinar, we've really focused on setting up your farm and doing planning. Let's talk about management and scheduling and record keeping. Julia talked about how AgSquared was an integrated tool where there was a connection between the planning process and the management process, and I can demonstrate that now by showing you the AgSquared calendar. So I've clicked into the AgSquared calendar, and you can see here that I have a view between May 19th and May 25th of 2014. I'm looking at a 7-day view. And as I scroll down, you can see that for each day, there are a lot of different activities that I have scheduled. If we look at May 21st, you'll notice that there are some activities that are directly related to plantings. So right here, I have an activity. If I click on it, it's direct sow arugula rocket, and then it has the date, the sowing date for that planting. This activity came over directly from my crop plan. So when I entered in this planting into my crop plan, it automatically created a direct sow activity on the date that it's supposed to occur, which is May 21st. In addition, it also brought over some of the information that I entered in about this arugula planting, such as the number of seeds I need to be growing and the layout of this planting in my field. You can notice here, here's another direct sow activity that came over from the crop plan. You'll also see that I have what we refer to as harvest markers. So on May 21st, I should be thinking about beginning to harvest these plantings, which again are coming over from my crops tool. So you can see here the integration between the crops tool and the calendar tool. And what this means, what this looks like for the farmers, that as the season gets going, they're really busy and they're thinking about things on a day-to-day or weekly basis. It's really easy for them to manage and stay on top of their crop plan because all the information from their plan is visible where they need to be seeing it. Now, of course, on a farm, there's a lot that happens, to plantings and just throughout the farm that don't necessarily need to be written down in your crop plan. And so to account for all the different activities that need to happen, you can add a bunch of different types of activities in AgSquared. You can see here on the activity button, you can apply input activities, harvest activities, weeding activities, and so on. And you can see I have a few different examples of different types of activities here. For example, tilling the soil. This is an activity I added. You can add photos to activities if you'd like. So by adding activities, what you can do is not only stay on top of your plantings and be scheduling planting activities, but you can also be keeping track of everything that's happening on your farm. Now, this becomes a really good staff management tool, the calendar. You can imagine, let's say you were meeting for a staff meeting on Tuesday. You can see actually that we have one scheduled here. Right before that staff meeting, you could enter in all your different activities that you need to be doing for the week. And then what you can do is go in and print out your calendar of activities in the form of work tickets. So if you click the print button, you'll see that all of these different activities that are here in my calendar in the 7-day view will show up in a printable format. So if not everyone on your farm has an iPhone or a laptop and they can't access the AgSquared account directly, you can print out this whole list of work tickets, which include all the relevant information for each different activity, and pass these out to your staff, and they have all the information they need to complete the task. So really nifty way to manage your staff using AgSquared, even if everyone isn't linked into your account through a mobile device or another computer. So another type of record I want to demonstrate, we have the journal tool. Journaling is really for keeping more qualitative observations or records on your farm. So you can see here there is a journal entry that the beet patch is almost done. It's pretty picked through and only has about 30 more bunches left. You know, a lot of times on farms, farmers are making mental notes or jotting notes down in their journal, but that information never really gets stored in an organized fashion. So adding journals to your AgSquared calendar is a great way to be keeping records. So let's talk a little bit about record keeping to sort of bring things full circle. We've created our plan in AgSquared, and then that plan has been brought over to our calendar where we've been able to manage our plan and schedule activities on the farm. And now let's say that it is actually May right now, and we want to go in and keep a record that something was done on our farm. This is really straightforward in AgSquared to do record keeping, since all of the information is already in your account. So if I just scroll down to May 22nd, let's say that this morning I was able to get out and sow my carrots. I can just click on complete, and just like that, I've kept a record that I've gone ahead and sown my carrots in my field. Again, I can go down to harvest arugula, click on this activity. I've taken a picture of my arugula harvest, and I can mark this activity as complete. And if I want, I can add in some other records about this completed activity. If I click on this More tab, I can enter in the start time of this activity, the duration, so the amount of time it took. I can enter in directly the harvest quantity here if I'd like, and I can also insert who did this activity and save this directly to my calendar. So record keeping is made really quite easy in AgSquared, because a lot of the information you want to be keeping records on is already here. Now, let's pretend it's the end of the season and we've gone through many months of keeping records in AgSquared, and now we want to actually be using those records. We're thinking about farming the next year and building up our crop plan for the following year, and you want to look at what happened this year on my farm. You can certainly use your calendar and go through things chronologically. We also have a filter tool over here on the left-hand side. The filter tool allows you to sort of sift through your records and look at your records from any perspective that you want. For example, let's say I just wanted to look at records for an individual planting over a course of a season. I can just enter in, we'll look at my kestrel beets again. And so if I filter my calendar by beets, you'll notice, right now I'm only looking at 7 days, but I'm able to look at just the activities that occurred, related to my beets over any given time. So if I was going to be planting beets the following year, I would have a sense of, what schedule should I make, what type of projections should I make for my beets. Also, you can just search by keyword. Maybe you wanted to look up your harvest records and find out how much you harvested of everything on your farm on a given week. I can just type in harvest, and here are all my different harvest activities in a given time period. Another way to review records in AgSquared, you can go to back to the crops tool, and you can simply just click on an individual crop. Pull up that crop. Sorry, let me use the kestrel beets again. And you'll notice that each individual planting has its own schedule tab. And right now the schedule tab is just looking at February 2014. If I was to filter back to March of 2013, I could also look up all of my different activities for this planting. The same goes for places. I can look at my records on a place-by-place basis if that's useful for me. And you'll notice that each individual place on my farm, so if I pull up the East Field once again, also has a schedule tab where you can look up all the activities that took place just in this given field. So I hope that brief tour gives everyone a sense of AgSquared and how it works in the process of planning to management to record keeping. What I want to do now quickly is talk a bit about AgSquared Plus. AgSquared Plus is a new version of AgSquared that's soon to be released in the next few weeks. And what AgSquared Plus is that it includes two different tools. You'll see up here that there is a staff tool and an inventory tool. Now, everything that I talked about so far during the webinar, which is the Places, Crops, and Calendar tool, is currently available in AgSquared. The staff tool and the inventory tool are coming in the next few weeks. What the staff tool does is that it allows you to enter in all of your staff members and information about each individual member. So this is essentially a staff inventory and a staff tracking tool. And you'll also see in the new inventory tool that's coming, in a similar fashion, you can enter in all the different materials, supplies, and equipment that you have on your farm. So for an example, I can click on Agribon row cover, and you can see that I can enter in different information about each individual product or material that I'm using on my farm. Now, what AgSquared Plus lets you do is not only enter in this information, but it allows you to assign a cost to this information. For example, I could put in a cost for my compost, per square yard of compost. And I can also put in a cost, or maybe we should say value, of my staff members, so their value per hour of their work. And once you enter in this information, it allows you to do cost accounting in AgSquared. So if I go back to the calendar for a brief moment and pull up an activity in the calendar, you'll see that there is a place where you can add staff to an activity, and you can also add materials and supplies to an activity. So this is a sowing activity of beets. So I could assign someone to do the sowing and talk about how many seeds and the cost of seeds that were required to get the sowing done, and then keep a record of that. By doing that and checking activities as complete, what I'm going to do now is hop back into my presentation and show you a mock-up of what AgSquared will be able to calculate for the farmer. Again, this is a mock-up because we haven't released AgSquared Plus yet. It doesn't currently exist in my account. But this is a wireframe or a mock-up, essentially an image of what it will look like. Here you can see we're in the Crops tool, and we have a Cost tab. And if we look at this chart here, we can see that we're tracking the total number of costs. And this number is coming from the cost of labor that has been broken down in all these different activities, and also the cost of materials and supplies that have been sort of assigned to my tomato crop. And I end up with a cost per unit for my tomatoes, which happens to be $4 a pound. So you can see here by adding in staff, by adding in your different materials and supplies on your farm, you can do cost accounting in AgSquared. And what this helps the farmer do is understand which crops are most expensive for them to grow, and really help them identify their different profit centers on their farm. Now, for beginning farmers, this might be one step ahead. Maybe the first year they really just want to be focusing on production. But again, AgSquared is really oriented towards helping farmers be more profitable and more sustainable. And as new farmers become more comfortable, these features are available to them so that they can scale up and be keeping better records. So we'll be doing a lot of promotion and webinars around AgSquared Plus in the coming months. So if you think that's something that you're interested in, or perhaps the farmers you're working with are interested in, If you just go to our website, you'll be able to look at a lot of information on AgSquared Plus. So with that, I'm going to conclude the tour of AgSquared, and I'm going to pass the microphone back over to Julia, who's going to wrap up. Actually, before I do that, sorry, Julia, I just want to quickly point out, I'll open up my browser once again, the AgSquared Support Center. David and I are in charge of keeping the support center up to date with a whole bunch of articles and videos. You'll see here, if I go back to AgSquared account, you'll see this blue help button. If you click on that, it opens up the support center. We have a lot of articles categorized by topic, so crop planning, calendar and journal, harvest tracking. And if I just click in one of these, you'll see that there's a lot of information that's useful for the new user or the beginning farmer. We have videos embedded in articles, and organized articles with tables of contents and so forth. I also want to point out, it's you're able to email us at any time. We have a really active support team. We usually get back to folks within the day, if not a few hours of their inquiry. So we encourage everyone to continually be writing us with questions if you have them. And you can do that directly from the support center by clicking on email us. Again, I just want to highlight our training webinars again. All this support is free of charge. It comes with your account. And the webinars are a great way to really understand sort of the nitty-gritty of AgSquared and how to use all the different features. So this is a great resource for beginning farmers. So with that, I will pass over the microphone to Julia and pull up the PowerPoint.
Great, Drew. Thanks so much for the tour. That was great, and there's been a lot of questions and chat going on in the background. So we have a really engaged group of participants. I know that I saw Dave answering a bunch of questions in real time, but like we mentioned at the beginning, we'll be able to have some time to answer questions at the end. And of course, I probably should have mentioned this at the beginning, but I'm actually filling in today for Brianna Ewart. Brianna is AgSquared's outreach team leader, and she's also a beginning farmer in Montana. On top of it all, besides all these commonalities, she also has a very special interest in farm incubator projects. She wrote her master's thesis on farm incubator projects and did numbers of interviews and case studies and a lot of research on the topic of farm incubators. So she's really sad that she couldn't be here today, but she will be following up with everybody who's interested in follow-up after this. So you'll get the opportunity to email or speak with her at a future date. So as we mentioned at the very beginning, I wanted to go through just, in this case, just one case study of a beginning farmer who is using AgSquared and kind of the value that this couple, Lara and Roger Anderson, are getting from AgSquared. So Lara and Roger Anderson, they are beginning farmers who are transitioning to farming from another career. They purchased a large parcel of land in southeast Minnesota, but are currently farming on only 2.5 acres. And the way that they're using AgSquared to really hone in on how they're going to be building their farm business is by understanding what it is that they are really good at doing. So they're testing out a number of different enterprises on their farm and trying to really find their niche. I was speaking with them over the summer, and they were thinking that, because of heavy competition in the area for farmers markets and CSAs, they might in the future focus on online farmers markets, which they currently have up and running, and possibly a winter CSA. And in terms of the features that they use in AgSquared, they rely pretty heavily on the crop calculators because they weren't farmers previously because they don't have farming experience as part of their, life background. They don't come from farming families. They don't necessarily have all of the data that they would need to know how to create their crop plans. So they really use AgSquared's crop planner as a way to create that structure that they need when getting started for the first time with farming. And what they hope is that with the records that they're collecting in AgSquared over time, they'll be able to extract from their farm records information about how their farm specifically does, and pull out parameters, let's say yield per row foot or something like that, that are specific to their farm and their land. And so that's just one case study, but we actually write case studies all the time. We do interviews with our users, and we have a number of other case studies, many of which are baked into the support materials that Brianna has created for people and trainers and organizations who work with beginning farmers. So I'm going to try to advance the PowerPoint. Oh, there we go. Okay. So in terms of training opportunities, one of the goals of the webinar was really to talk about not only highlight what about AgSquared is really good for beginning farmers, but also talk about AgSquared as a training and teaching tool. So because AgSquared is a structured software package, we believe that it can really help guide beginning farmers through the stages of crop planning and record keeping and collect the information that they need so that they can make better decisions in the future. So a few features about AgSquared that make it appropriate, we believe, for use in an educational setting is that everybody who uses AgSquared can start out with a free trial, and this is one of those free trials that doesn't even require a credit card, so it's really truly free and there's no commitment, and it gives people the chance to test out AgSquared and see whether it will work for their farm and just generally get to know the software package before they commit. As Drew mentioned, he and Dave run the support center, and it's just chock full of resources, articles, webinars, and there's all kinds of free support that that a farmer can have access to. We host regular webinars. I think Drew made reference to a couple of them. But there's also other resources and materials that we have available for organizations who are interested in incorporating AgSquared into their training programs. Drew, could you advance the slide, please? There we go. Thank you. So for those organizations who think that AgSquared could be a useful tool as part of their beginning farmer trainings, we can create custom webinars. We've created a number of PDFs that contain case studies and kind of a breakdown of AgSquared's features that are specifically targeted at beginning farmers. Brianna's also been creating a newsletter, and this newsletter is targeted at educators, so it would be an occasional email that would allow somebody to sort of stay up to date as to what the new features that AgSquared is launching are. For example, AgSquared Plus, other resources, opportunities, and trainings that we're making available. And we're very open to your ideas. So Ava asked us to also mention how some of the other organizers and beginning farmer trainers are using AgSquared. So I just want to point out just a couple of different programs that we've been working on this winter. So an extension agent from Alabama, his name is Tony Glover, approached us over the winter as he was presenting on record keeping at a farming conference. And for Tony, what we were able to do was put together a small package of a couple of slides with some screenshots that just gave us kind of a tour and overview of AgSquared so that Tony could include the content about AgSquared in a presentation that he was giving on record keeping, since he wanted to highlight at least a couple of, or at least one online or software-based tool for record keeping. In addition, we're working with the Pembroke Farming Family Association, which is based out of Illinois, and is in the process of training beginning farmers in new enterprise development. We're working with them on a year-long training program that will incorporate AgSquared as a key planning, management, and record-keeping tool. And Drew's actually going to be flying out to Illinois sometime in the month of April to give an in-person training to this group of beginning farmers And so we have opportunities for in-person training as well. And speaking of in-person trainings, in Pennsylvania, in association with PASA, the Pennsylvania Association for Sustainable Agriculture, AgSquared has put on a initially just one, but actually now we've expanded it to be at least 3 in-person training workshops this winter, I should say. And the goal of those training sessions is really to take somebody through the process of creating their crop plan in AgSquared and learning how to use all of the software's tools, so that by the time they go home, they have the start of their information already loaded into their AgSquared account, and are well on their way to crop planning and record keeping with the software. As I mentioned, we're really open to your ideas. I know Brianna is eager to follow up with everybody, so if you could please complete the survey at the end of the webinar, that would really help us out. There are some questions in there that are also of interest to Ava as well, so that would be super. And from here, I think Drew and I are going to be taking your questions. So if you haven't had the chance to chat your questions already, please allow them to filter through, and we'll start picking and answering.
Great. Thanks, Julia. Some great questions have come in, and I'm just going to start going down the list and addressing them. Somebody has asked if we're going to have a mobile app. Yes, we certainly are. It's something that's currently in development. And I actually believe I have a mock-up of what the mobile app is going to be looking like. Here we go. Up next, mobile app. For the first release of the mobile app, which will be sometime in 2014, we're going to make it really easy for farmers to be doing their harvest tracking. So they'll be able to essentially be in the field or in the packing house and bringing in, their sun-gold tomatoes, for example, and entering in, the amount that they harvested right there in their packing house. That information will, of course, be linked to your AgSquared account, so you can go look at that harvest information, when you log into your laptop at a later time. Another part of the Harvest app will be the AgSquared calendar, so you'll be able to quickly look up, what it is you need to be doing out in the field at any given time, just by pulling out your phone or your tablet. Another great benefit of the app will be just doing record keeping on the fly, so you don't necessarily need to come in at the end of the day and sit down on your computer and be entering in a lot of information. You can be doing record keeping real time. Again, for staff management, if you have a crew of farmers that help you out on the farm and they have mobile technology, a smartphone or a tablet, they can be logging in and seeing what needs to be done on the farm at any given time. So keep an eye out for the mobile app. As we get closer to a release date, we will sure to keep everyone in the loop and just be making announcements about the app itself. So second question, can I import data into AgSquared, and can I export data out of AgSquared? This is a really good question and something we usually cover in most webinars, but just given the fact that we had so much to go over today, we didn't get to it. If I look, I'm back here in my AgSquared account, and if I go to my crops tool, I can highlight where you can do importing and exporting. There's an import-export button here. For new farmers, it's they may not necessarily have old records from previous years. However, if someone's coming to AgSquared and maybe it's their second, third, or fourth year farming, and they've been keeping records in Excel or even on paper, it would be nice for them to be able to use those records as they do crop planning in 2014 and beyond. And AgSquared makes that really easy. By importing, we have templates that you can download, so you can copy and paste your information from your other crop plans directly into our templates. Click import, and all your plantings will be automatically added to your AgSquared account so that you can see them and work with them. For those, let's say, that are just more comfortable with Excel and they'd rather be doing sort of the planning or the data entry using Excel, you can certainly create your 2014 planting in a spreadsheet or in one of our templates, and then import that template into your account so you're off and running. There's a lot of information about the import process in our help center. You can download your templates directly from this article, and you can see here that there's step-by-step instructions. It's really quite straightforward. Once you've created your templates, you can get all your plantings into your account in just a few minutes. In terms of exporting, we have a lot of different options for exporting. Again, I demonstrated how you can review records directly in your calendar by filtering your calendar. But if you want to be exporting, so that you can have your records saved on your desktop, or even having them in print form, you can certainly do that. You can see here we have numerous export options: export a seed order, a propagation plan, a field plan. You can export your harvest projections, and finally, you can export all of your crop data. What I'll do is I'll just click on this to demonstrate what the exports look like. Just give it a moment to download. And I can pop this open in Excel. A lot of people like to export their information because they like to have a record of their crop plan. So when farmers have finished entering in their crop plan at the beginning of the season, they like to export it. And then at the end of the season, they'll do another export of their data in AgSquared and be able to compare what changed from their plan to exactly what happened. Or maybe you have an organic certifier that's coming by to your farm and you want to show him something on paper. All of the information, all the records you keep in AgSquared, you can print out and pass it on to the certifier. Here you can see this is the all crop plan. So on the left-hand side, I have all my crops and varieties. And then I have a bunch of information from the sowing date, transplant dates, the planting material quantity, material type, all the way down to the spacing and layout of my plantings, and the expected harvest of that planting. Now, again, depending on which export you choose to look at, it will generate different information. And this is something that we're developing over time. We'll have a lot of different types of exports, hopefully coming in 2014. So different ways to look at your information that you're entering in AgSquared. So there was another question: how much time do farmers take to use XSquared and make it valuable for their farm? This is a really good question. And it really, I have to say, it really varies, and it depends on what the farmer is hoping to get out of AgSquared. We've definitely seen a lot of successful scenarios where farmers have spent, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 hours creating their crop plan, creating their farm map, and then sort of dropped off throughout the course of the season, and they haven't done a lot of that record keeping in their calendar. So maybe in total they spent under 7 hours in the beginning of the year developing their crop plan, but that was really it. And we find that AgSquared is still really valuable for these farmers because, one, it helped them get really organized, just going through the crop planning process, and having all of their crops and plantings organized in one place, allowed them to sort of get off on the right foot and make sure that they were implementing a plan. And then, at the end of the year, even though they didn't keep a lot of records in their account, when it came time to make the crop plan for the subsequent year, they were really easily, able to look back and see, what they grew, last year and compare that with how things did, and then, make their crop plan, sort of duplicate their crop plan for the next year. And XSquared has a duplication button when it comes to your crops and plantings. So if you want to do succession planting, or duplicate plantings that you grew last year for the following year without entering in all the information again, we make that really easy. You know, other farmers who spend a little bit more time in AgSquared, you know, maybe they make very detailed, you know, crop plans. They use the calculators, they enter in all their planting locations, they assign their transplants to benches in greenhouses, and they're doing their labor tracking and really checking in with AgSquared on a daily basis. You know, they get quite a bit of value out of AgSquared, and some of this value includes you know, the ability to compare varieties on their farm, develop and you know, stay on top of a crop rotation plan, manage their staff, and so forth. So, to answer the question, it's important for the farmer to really think about what they want to get out of AgSquared, think about what their record keeping goals are, and then you know, enter in the data that's useful for meeting their goals. So. Again, you can just spend a few hours with AgSquared and get a lot of value out of it. If you spend a lot of time, you know, many hours throughout the season, you're just going to get a little bit more out of the software. So there are some other questions here that I'll quickly answer. What is the cost of AgSquared? AgSquared, for everything that I demonstrated today, with the exception of staff and inventory, is $99 for the year. That's an annual subscription. You can sign up directly from your free trial. So if you go to up here to your farm profile page, which has got this little cog icon, you can enter in your payment details here and pay directly from your account. And it will tell you your expiration date, which will be a year from when you sign up, or I'm sorry, when you enter in your payment information. Cost of AgSquared Plus. AgSquared Plus, which will include all of the cost accounting features I mentioned, the staff tool and the inventory tool, and some other features and tools that I didn't demonstrate today, will be $299 a year. And again, that will be on a subscription basis. So again, we'll have a lot more information about AgSquared Plus in the coming weeks. Another question, is AgSquared offered in different languages? Currently, AgSquared is only offered in English. That being said, we do recognize we do get users from other parts of the world, and we are looking at taking some of our materials and translating them into other languages. So right now in the support center, we do have some articles in Spanish. There are not very many yet. We're currently working with a translator to populate the support center with more articles in Spanish. And if you work with a community that speaks another language, and they're really invested in AgSquared, and you think there would be a lot of value in translating our support center, or just a few key articles that they can reference into their language, be in touch with us, and we can discuss how we can do that. It will probably be a little while until AgSquared, the software, is translated into another language, but it's definitely something that's on our radar, and we will be doing in the future. So, Julia, do you want to address any questions that have come in?
Hey, Drew. No, I think you did a great job going through all the questions. So just to iterate, there's going to be a survey at the end of this. If you guys could all take a moment to please fill out the survey, it would really help us out, help Ava out, and the NIFTI program as well. And of course, there's opportunities to stay in touch. Brianna will reach out to anybody who indicates an interest through the survey. So if you have more questions, we're always here and happy to converse and help answer your questions and brainstorm and think of ideas for ways that we can work together.
Great. And if for any reason your question did not get answered, we will be sure to follow up with an email in the next day or so. Well, with that, thank you all for joining, and we hope to hear from you soon. Please reach out to us if you have any other questions about AgSquared or training opportunities, And we look forward to working with everyone in the future. So thanks for joining today, and have a great afternoon.